Hello, this is the Adaptive Formulations Spring 2012 tutorial on assembly, design, and drawing production. Today we're going to look at some of the tools and methodologies for creating a set of linked drawings to this assembly model that we've been putting together really over the past several weeks. I'm not going to cover the product structure too much in terms of how this is set up between wireframe and parts. We've talked about that at length in previous tutorials and in class. But for now, what we're going to look at is how to make a few different kinds of drawings in the drawing workbench in CATIA. So what I have open here is what I'm calling a unit template. This is a panel in a larger facade system, and it's based on a series of 5 inputs. There's a local wireframe. There's a number of sections that are constrained to that wireframe via uh, axis systems, and there's a number of contextual parts and an IGU. And we're just going to look at how to quickly make a link drawing to that. So what I'm going to do is hit Control N, and I can make a new drawing. The other way to access the new document dialog box is to go File, New, Drawing. Okay. And this is going to bring up a secondary dialog box that is going to ask for the standard for the sheet in the drawing. So we're going to be using ANSI as the standard, and we're going to use the sheet size B ANSI, which is more or less equivalent to an 11 by 17 sheet. And we're going to click OK. And this is going to bring up the drawing drafting workbench in CATIA. You're going to see your tools off to the right, off to the left. We've got a tree view, much like we have in the part design or assembly design workbenches. We're going to see the tree off on the left, and every object that we make in here, i.e. views or actual drawn geometry, is going to show up as an object in the tree. A couple of important toolbars over here. This toolbar that you see with the blue and the yellow cube, I usually like to pull that out. It's got the projections toolbar, and it's got a number of different tools in there. One of the other workbenches I like to pull out are the sections workbench here, and the other one that we're going to use is going to be the dimension toolbar here. So those three are going to, for the most part, cover the tools that we're going to be using in the drawing workbench for today. So let's go ahead and Control Tab back to our model. Control Tab switches back and forth between active documents in session in CATIA. And looking back at the model here, you can see that I have set up a scene, and the scene production and generation is also covered in other tutorials. But what I've done in the scene is, kind of blown apart this assembly to create a kind of exploded view. I'm going to exit out of that scene. And the first drawing that we're going to create is going to be an isometric view. So in the projections toolbar, you'll see this little white isometric view tool. I'm going to click that, and it's going to turn orange. And when it's orange, it means that it is an active tool. You can see in the bottom left of the screen it says select a reference plane on a 3D geometry. So I'm going to hit Control Tab over to this geometry. I'm going to click on some geometry, and it bounces right back to my drawing view with a one-to-one isometric view. You can see the view here, and you can also see that the view is much, much larger than the page. The default size or scale for a new view creation in most CATIA deployments is going to be 1-to-1. So what we want to do is actually find the properties of this view and change its scale. And there's two different ways to access the properties. You can zoom out and select this dotted red line around the view, which is the view itself, or you can select it in the tree. And if I right click, go to properties, I can change the scale something like 1 to 10. See how that looks. And we zoom in, And we can see that it's fitting on the page, but we might want it to be at a little bit smaller. So right click, go to properties, change it 1 to 15. And we can drag that view around on the page wherever we want to place it. And there's our view. The second isometric view that we're going to create is an exploded isometric view based on that scene that we generated. So I'm going to click on the isometric view tool again, Control Tab. This time I'm going to select the scene itself in the tree first. It's going to be highlighted and turn orange. After I've clicked that scene, I'm then going to select some geometry, and I'm going to click in the box, and it's going to generate my drawing. I'm not really happy with this angle. I'd actually like to rotate it a little bit more so that I can see all of the parts in there. So I'm actually going to select it and just delete, and I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to click that isometric view, Control Tab, and I'm actually going to rotate this view around a little bit and see if that actually generates a better shot. Yeah, it looks a little better. So not great, but it'll work for the purposes of this tutorial. So now I'm going to select this, right click, properties. I'm going to change the scale again, 1 to 15. Oops. And you can see the view down here. I'm going to drag it up so it's actually on the page. Zoom in. There's my exploded view. Now I actually think both of these views are a little bit too big. You also want to drag the automatic label along with it. So you can see it automatically generates a drawing title, isometric view, scale 1 to 15. If I change the scale on those objects, the label will automatically update. So I'll change it to 1 to 20. So you can see that label automatically updated. So that's probably a better size for this page. And you're going to want to save this drawing. File, save as, and save it in the same directory where you have all of your parts for that unit saved. So in the directory where all of those parts are is going to be a product for your assembly, all of your contextual parts, and a drawing. They're all going to be saved in the same location. So save that out. I'm going to hit cancel because I've actually got a pre-baked version of this elsewhere that I'll show you in a moment. So make sure you save this in the appropriate location. The next step is we're going to try to create a kind of an IKEA style drawing, and we're going to try to label each one of these parts with a balloon with a number that will correspond to a table or a bill of materials that tells us which part is which part. So the first step in doing that, I'm going to go Control Tab over to my model. I need to be in the product structure workbench. In the product structure workbench, you're going to see a tool that says generate numbering off on the right. I'm going to click that, and it's going to want me to select my top level product, and it has options for either integers or letters. Let's use integers for this, so the parts will be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on as integers. I'm going to click OK. Now when I've done that, it's actually altered this product, so you make sure you want to save your product, Control Tab, back over here, and with that exploded drawing active, I'm going to double click on the exploded drawing, either by double clicking on its view frame or double clicking in the tree. And we can find the generate balloons tool underneath this generate dimensions. There's some generative tools here. It looks like a little blue cube with a hole through it. Hidden underneath that tool is going to be the generate balloons tool. And when I click that, it should generate all of my balloons. And I can drag those around, and I can compose this however I want. You can even go into those arrows and drag them along the object. They will snap to the object itself. If I want this one more kind of in the center, I can do that. So you can drag these around as you see fit. looks good. So let's stick with that composition. And the next step that we're going to do is to generate this table, which is called a bill of materials. Bill of materials is going to tell us information about each of these parts in a table format. And usually in a fabrication set, you're going to have a bill of materials for an assembly. So it'll say you need this many of this part, this many of this part, and so on. Let's go to, make sure you have the exploded view active, and go to Insert, Generation, Bill of Material, and choose Advanced Bill of Material. It's actually, in my mind, simpler than the regular bill of material, even though it says Advanced. Click on that, and it's going to say select a product or view, so we can just select our exploded view, and it's now asking us to indicate a position. You can see on the bottom left hand side of the screen it's giving us instructions on what the tool wants. It says indicate a position to insert the bill of material, so let's just insert it right here. Now it's giving us a list of the parts, their quantities, their types, the nomenclature and revision. Nomenclature and revision are properties of the part that we have not filled out at this point, and we probably won't for this exercise. But what we can do is we can customize this table to not include those two columns in the bill of materials, and actually we also want it to include these numbers. So I want to know which part this AF2.3 underscore mullion 01. It should give you the number, so it'll point to which one it is. So we can highlight that bill of materials, right click, go to properties, and go all the way over to the reported properties tab, and it's going to give you some options for dealing with which properties are reported in this table. I can highlight each one of these, and what I can do is I can actually say I don't want the revision to be a column in there, so I'm actually going to use this eraser and erase that, and I'm also going to erase nomenclature. Alright, and I can click apply. You can see that it erased those two columns. What we can also do is we can use this button to add a new column, and let's choose the item number, and let's give it a title. Call it item number, and click apply. And click OK. Now we've got a bill of materials that's telling us the item number relative to each of these parts and what they're called and what their quantities are and what their types are. You can embed all kinds of information in a bill of materials, but for now that is at least telling us which part is which. And you're going to want to save, and let's make a new sheet now. Now we're going to make a couple of different kinds of drawings. We're going to make a front view. So on the projections toolbar, you're going to see the front view tool. Control tab over to the model and click on a face of that assembly. And when this front view comes up, you're going to see this compass on the top right hand side. This compass is going to let you rotate and flip that around as you want for however you want to draw the thing. So let's draw it in that angle. I'm going to click OK. And let's change it to 1 to 20. You can see that the view extents are very large, and the reason for that is it's actually including the origin in that view. So if your origin is very close to your assembly, the view extents will be actually much smaller. But in this case, the origin is very far away from our panel, which is fine. So let's say that's our front view. Looks good. You see our label showed up, and now we're going to cut a section. So remember the section toolbar that we pulled off up here. Let's say we want to cut a section through one of these sides. Let's click the offset section view tool. Click it once, and I can draw a line across by clicking on the endpoints of that curve. But I want this to be perpendicular. So you can see before I click the second time, as I drag around, it'll actually snap when it's perpendicular to that curve. So I can go perpendicular to either the left portion of that section or the right portion of that section. And what we want to do is double click when you're ready, And when you double click, then it's going to let you pull that section off and place it where you want to put it on the page. Click OK. It looks good. So there's our section. Now I know that when CATIA generates a section cut, it actually also generates a hatch. But in this case, you can see the hatch, the scale on this hatch is much too large for the section cut. So if we zoom in and just select a line from that hatch, and we go Alt-Enter to access the properties, or we can right-click on it and go to Properties. What we can do is we can adjust the pitch, which is basically the scale. I'll go 0.5 on the pitch. Let's do it again. Let's do 0.25. So that hatch looks a little bit better. And let's say I don't like the angle. I can change the angle to 100 if I like, or I can change it to 200. Whatever you want. You have quite a bit of control over how this hatch looks. You can also change it to a color. So if I have to go to this type option and go to coloring, I can change the color to yellow. So instead of a hatch, we now have yellow color. So let's stick with the color for now. And let's go to this other hatch on the glass. Another way to find your hatches is actually go Control F for search, and under type go to the drafting workbench. Under the workbench go to drafting. Under type go to generated shape and click find. And what that will do is it'll highlight all of your hatches, and if we go Control Enter, we can then change the pitch on all of them to 0.25. Right. So let's now pull out a detail view. Oops, I need to make sure that my view is active, so I'm going to pull a detail view out of this section cut, and what I want to do is just get a little shot of this section and blow it up to a much larger scale so I can see it. So click on the detail view tool, top right hand side of the page. And the detail view works on a circle concept, so I'm going to click the center point of the circle and find how big I want that to be. I'm going to click over here, and it actually made a 1 to 10, but that's actually changed that to a 1 to 2. So there's the detail view now, and I can adjust these hatches as I see fit, change it to coloring, yellow, apply. Coloring, change the glass to blue and the spacer to black. And we can also add some dimensions to this, so we can look at this extrusion profile here and actually pull some radii dimensions as we want, like this. I can grab a length dimension off of here. I can dimension the other radius and so on. I can work my way around and get all the critical dimensions. And if I want to change the units of these dimensions, I can just select all of them, hit Enter, Alt-Enter to access the properties, and I can change the units to millimeters, and I can change precision to 3 decimal places if I like. Click Apply. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to open the finished version of this drawing, and we'll just take a look at it. So here's a isometric view, an exploded exploded isometric view, and a bill of materials. Second drawing, I've just got a front view, a section view, and a detail view. And then on the third page, I just made a single drawing of every part. And the way you do this is just open the parts up one at a time. So that in order to draw just one part by itself without any of its neighbors, you need to open up that part by itself. So if we Control Tab back to the model and and say I want to draw mullion 4, if I right click on it, open a new window, I have this part all by itself now. Right, so I can just make a front view, side view, whatever I need to off of that individual part. And I've got a section here. So that outlines I think the primary tools that you'll be using for the current assignment in the drawing workbench. The next tutorial is going to be utilizing some knowledge reuse, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.